Hi, this is Scott Garibay, and today I'm going to be talking about the movie Hell or High Water. So I saw this movie recently in theaters, and it was excellent. Very, very good film. I liked it. It was a really unusual film. It was set in contemporary times today, and it was told in West Texas, United States of America. And it was about two brothers, Toby and Tanner. Toby is the cautious brother, and he is played by Chris Pines. And then Tanner is the wild brother, and he's an ex-criminal, a criminal who just got out of jail, and he is played by Ben Foster. Now, Chris Pines, I'm familiar with. I very much enjoy his work in the Star Trek movies. So he plays Captain Kirk in the Star Trek movies. He's great. I think he does a really good job there. And then Ben Foster is a much lower level actor. He hasn't done as much work as Chris Pine, or he's done as much work as Chris Pine, but I don't want to say he's a B-list actor, but I don't think there's ever been a film that made $100 million that he was the primary protagonist. But he's such an I think he's famous for playing the really intense guy, right? So that's his shtick, is just being this super intense person, right? And he does a great job with that role. He's very intense, and does a really good job with it. So, and he does the same thing in this movie. And it makes me wonder, I don't know if you guys have heard about that old thing that people say about actors. There are actors and then there are B'ers. A good example of this is like Christopher Walken. You hire Christopher Walken to come into your movie and be Christopher Walken. Just guys who do what they do, and you're not going to see a ton of range when they act. Now, I don't know. I think that Ben Foster absolutely may have range, but he's so good at playing this intense character. It's what he gets cast in, and I think he actually is the heart of this film, and he's what makes the film fun and interesting. Although Chris Pine does a great job, I think Ben Foster is the real heart of the film, and really, it's a very he does a great job of just playing this intense criminal. So it also has Jeff Bridges and another gentleman and those guys are both, I believe they're Texas Rangers. They're either Texas Rangers or U.S. Marshals. So I'll refer to them as Texas Rangers here. So essentially, literally, cowboy hat wearing law enforcement, official government law enforcement, but with a real Texas bent. So this movie it's interesting. This movie is about Texas, but in my opinion, it's not really. In some ways, it's not about Texas. It's really about Midwest America. It's really about what are referred to as flyover states. I try not to use that term. I know it denigrates those states. But it really, this movie had a real point to it. And I really like this film a lot. So, like all of my movie reviews, this has spoilers. So just be aware of that. All right. So what happens in the film is that Toby, cautious brother, he has been caring for his mother, and his mother owns a ranch where they have cattle. And this ranch has been doing really poorly for, like a decade, right? Well, his mom goes out and gets a reverse mortgage loan when she's very old, and it's a predatory loan by a bank, okay? So she's a little bit tricked into it, or at minimum, they're just doing some shenanigans to make sure that they get the land, right? And so there is $25,000, which is owed on the land to the bank. And so Chris Pines owes this money, and if they don't get this $25,000 in this week, in the next 7 days, then they lose the ranch, right? Now Tanner, the wild brother, has just gotten out of jail, right? So he gets out of jail, and he gets out of jail, and like almost the moment he gets out of jail, his brother's like, hey, I hate to do this to you, but I need to get $25,000 in 7 days. You know, you and me are, he doesn't say this. He says it in a different amount of words, but like, you and me can't get any credit, right? That's a nice way of putting it. And so we got to get this money really quick in 7 days. And so I'm going to rob a lot of banks, and I need you to help me. And his brother's, bet, I'm in, let's do it, right? And then it goes from there, right? Now, the cautious brother, Toby, is like, we're going to be really careful about this. You know, we're going to bring guns, but nobody's going to get shot. Nobody's going to get hurt. This is just about getting the money for the ranch, right? But his brother is very realistic. He's like, you know, he never says it to, Tanner never says this to, Tanner the wild brother never says this to Toby, the cautious brother. He never says, hey, but he says it with his actions, if not his words. He's like, we're robbing banks. Just shut up, man. You know, you got a gun. If somebody's going to get shot, somebody's going to get shot. Let's not pretend this is anything but what it is. Yeah, we're robbing banks. Everybody's got a reason. Our reason may be a little more justified than anybody else, but at the end of the day, you and I are bank robbers, so let's not pretend, right? Which I thought was really good, because it really, you know, I think a lot of people do evil things thinking they have a good motive. That act is still evil, you know, and sometimes you should just take the loss, you know, and boy, man, this movie is really interesting. So these two begin robbing banks, right? And everything's going along okay. And this was the most fascinating part of this movie. The movie showed what it takes to rob a bank in 2016. Absolutely fascinating, right? So these guys are hitting no less than 5, 6, 7 banks, right? And these are modern day bank robbers, right? So in order to rob a bank today, they gave you the 411. They gave you all the information of what happens when you rob a bank today. The way you rob a bank today is you do it the same way you did in the old days. Ski mask and a pistol or a gun, whatever you're bringing, right? But you got to bring a gun. And basically you tell the tellers, you only get the money that is in the teller's drawers. And even with that, you cannot grab the hundreds. So all you are grabbing are 20s, 5s, and 10s out of the teller's drawers. That's it, right? I was like, what? That's crazy, right? You know, like, and that's what the movie was saying. Like, this was crazy. That's why they had, you know, so they robbed like 5 to 8 banks to get $25,000. So you're getting $2,000 to $3,000 per branch. Right? That's ridiculous. That is like, to rob a bank for $3,000, that is this, you would have to be a meth head, right? Like, you just have to have no brains in your head, right? And actually, that's one of the things I really liked about this movie was, after this whole thing was said and done, man, there were like, you know, half a dozen, there were like 3 or 4 people dead. Maybe 2, you know. At minimum, there were 2 people dead. At most, there was like, no more than half a dozen. So basically, one of the Texas Rangers dies, and I think one guy dies in the last bank robbery, and maybe 1 or 2 more people. Right? It's a low body count in this movie, right? And that's good. You know, they were talking about this seriously, and the Chris Pine character feels terrible about, you know, these people dying. But I had very little sympathy for him. If you rob a bank, man, you know things are going to go south. Like, that ain't going to work, you know? And you know, and one of the reasons why is I'm a strong believer that crime really does not pay. Actually, I hate to say this, blue-collar crime does not pay. I think white-collar crime can pay outrageously well, although that's still evil, and I think people should not do that. And I would never partake in that of myself. But I've read enough to know that if you do white collar crime, man, very few of those people are ever prosecuted. So blue collar crime does not pay, right? The odds on you getting out alive, the odds on you getting out with any significant amount of money is ridiculously low, right? And actually, this movie, it had a happy ending for Chris Pine. But so these two go on this bank robbing spree, and the end of the film is, you know, the last bank robbery goes really poorly, and Ben Foster he plays the Wild brother, Tanner. He tells the cautious brother, hey, you gotta go, and I'm gonna I'll get the cops to chase me, right? And so his brother's like, okay, like, what? Yeah, let's do it. And he doesn't want to leave his brother, but he does. And so Ben Foster, there's this great ending of the film where he takes a pickup truck and just heads right up into the mountains of Texas and like goes up onto this like rocky cliff edge, And the first thing he does is he drives this. He gets all these cops chasing him in this, souped up sports utility vehicle, SUV, kind of an old school, almost like a Bronco, right? I think it might have been a Ford pickup truck, modified a little bit. And so they run this thing up into the. He runs this thing up in the hills, sets off a Molotov cocktail in it, and lets that thing roll back down and hit all the cop cars, and makes all this destructive noise and an explosion, and blows up some cop cars, and then he scrambles up the cliff, right? And he gets up there with essentially a sniper rifle, and he just goes to town, ping, 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 and he shoots this one cop right through the head, who is Jeff Bridges' partner, and and Jeff Bridges' partner is like really upset, and so it was pretty fascinating, and then Jeff Bridges, he hauls his old butt way up over this other mountain, almost dies. You could see he like barely almost has a heart attack doing it. And they portrayed it, and I'm not being cruel to Jeff Bridges in the film. They portrayed him as like, this is his, he could easily die doing this. He's very close to retirement. So he barely lives climbing up this mountain, and then shoots Ben Foster, Tanner, the Wild brother, through the head, right? So Toby, the cautious brother, has saved the ranch. Oh, but there are three people dead, right? One person died in the bank robbery. Cop gets killed, and Ben Foster's character Tanner gets killed. All dead, right? And it was a really, really intense film. It was shot extremely well. It was acted extremely well. I thought the star of the film was Ben Foster, which is cool because I think it's really a shame that he never really clicked, that he never was enough to carry an action movie on his own. I think he should have been a bigger star than he was. A really, really talented actor. I like his stuff a lot. So Ben Foster was great in this. I think he was really the heart of the film. Really, really good film, right? Now, what's interesting is, now there were a few things I didn't like. One of them was this whole line where there were definitely some problems with the character of Toby. So one of the things they did in the movie was that Toby wasn't getting these. Toby wasn't getting this money to save the ranch for himself. He was getting this money to save the ranch for his sons, right? And he has these two sons, I think 15 and 12 or something, right? Two boys. And I thought it was kind of weird because they said they show him and he doesn't have a family, right? So he's got an ex-wife and he's got two sons he doesn't live with that he hasn't seen in a long time. They also show him as they say that he's a serious drinker and that he was a terrible father and a terrible husband, right? Now, the thing that's weird is it seems like all those qualities go away when he starts robbing these banks. He's completely dependable, just rock solid dude, that does nothing wrong and doesn't really have any outbursts. He's completely in control, right? Maybe he just seemed that way compared to his brother. And then the other thing is that he's doing all this to get this. Oh, by the way, another reason why they want to save the ranch is they found oil on the ranch, right? So they're going to start pumping oil immediately on the ranch as soon as they save the ranch by stealing all this money, right? So it was just really, really interesting because all this for an ex-wife and kids that you're not even actually fathering, right? The ex-wife he's estranged from his wife, right? It's ex-wife, they're divorced, and then his sons, he doesn't even have custody of them, right? It's not even like a shared custody thing, right? So here he's been this crap father all these years, but he's going to do everything to give this ranch to his sons. And at the end of the movie, they even show his wife coming into the house with his sons, and his wife even says, you know, ex-wife, like he doesn't live there. He's just doing some repairs around the place. And so all this was done for, you know, this woman that he divorced and for these sons that he's not taking enough time to even care for, right? And it was just weird. I thought that was really kind of strange. I don't know why they threw it into the movie. It was hard to understand, and it like it didn't present a consistent story for Toby. Now, with that said, you know, Chris Pines did a great job of just like, you know, making you feel for this guy. Now, one other thing about this film is the whole aspect of the flyover state aspect of this. And now, what I mean by that is the parts of America that are run down, where there's really no activity, guys who have a very hard time getting jobs because they're doing jobs that are old. Like, there's literally a scene in here where they show, you know, cows being moved across a plains, right? And that was extremely interesting because I work in information technology, and I really I'm very blessed to work in that field, and there's good jobs in that field, lots of jobs in that field, a growing amount of jobs in that field. And I feel like if you don't know how to use computers today, man, you are going to have a very, very hard time, right? And that's what this movie was saying. Like, dudes who don't use computers and are just trying to, you know, spackle walls and move cows around are going to be really stuck and really jammed up. And it was just telling a story of what these guys had to do because they were so, you know, so stuck, right? And so that was interesting to me. I have a lot of thoughts on that. Maybe I'll break that off and do a separate video on that. But the movie did a great job of kind of telling the story of guys who maybe don't really get their story told all the time or frequently. And I thought that was really interesting. And overall, just a great film. And I highly recommend seeing it. Oh, there was one more really a standout character in it that I really liked a lot. And it was, you know, again, this was a blue-collar movie. This movie was about blue-collar people, right? And it also, one of the things I thought was really good was, especially at the Texas Ranger level, right? These guys weren't cops. They were like detectives, right? And they were elevated cops. So the movie was really clear to make it clear that the cops, the Rangers, were not part of that blue-collar class. So there was this one scene where Toby and Tanner, the brothers, go and get lunch. And there's this waitress who waits on them and can tell that Toby is just so worried and, you know, really downtrodden. And she, you know, just brings the food out, and she's very nice. And she, you know, is kind of caring toward him. And it's a really nice scene. The actress who did it, I'm sorry I don't know her name. I haven't seen her in anything else. She was excellent. I hope that I get to see her in other films. She did a really good job of just like playing this waitress who was just doing a good job of kind of like going above and beyond and talking to the customer. And she got a $200 tip. Well, the Texas Ranger comes along and he just snags that tip up, right? And so the whole film was just about, you know, like these different class levels, and definitely it's absolutely worth seeing. So check it out if you get a chance. Take care, everybody.